in solving the deficit problem. Without a growing economy, without a strong middle class, the deficit will never be solved. So we're out to do it. How can we do it? Well, how about our legislative agenda? Why don't you start us off on a couple of the bills and see where it takes us?
I thank the gentleman. I think one of the important investments that we need to make in supporting manufacturing that you just referenced is infrastructure. And one of the parts of the Make It in America agenda is the creation of a national infrastructure bank, which will create a public-private partnership to finance the construction of roads and bridges and transit and the ability to move information and goods and services in the 21st century. If we're going to successfully compete in the manufacturing sector, we need to have an infrastructure that has the ability to move goods and services and information to be competitive and succeed in the 21st century economy. When you look at what other nations who are investing in manufacturing are investing in their infrastructure to support manufacturing, in roads, in bridges, in transit, in information technology, and the ability to move goods and services competitively, they are racing by us, literally and figuratively. And what we need is an infrastructure that will support this growth in manufacturing, an infrastructure that will really allow American manufacturers to compete successfully in the 21st century.
If you will yield, the infrastructure bank's a great idea, and it's one in which it allows us to build immediately, and over time, as those projects pay off, they repay the loans. It is a very, very wise investment to create an infrastructure bank. Other countries have it, and in the United States there are certain localities and states that also have it. Another piece of legislation dealing with infrastructure actually is a bill that I put together that says, well, we spend a lot of money. It's part of the excise tax money that goes out to build highways, to pay for buses, trains, light rails, and the like. And my bill is pretty simple. It's our tax money. Use that tax money to buy American-made equipment. Why would we send our tax money off to China to buy a Chinese bus? Hey, we make great buses. We make a great bus in the Bay Area. The Gillig Corporation makes a bus that is a superb bus, and we need to spend our taxpayer money buying American-made buses, trains, light rails, and the like. We're going to spend billions. Is the money going to be spent in America, or is the money going to be spent overseas? My legislation says buy American-made equipment. Pretty simple. After all, it's our tax money. One of several bills, the infrastructure bank and this particular bill, in building the American infrastructure. I yield back, and I notice one of our colleagues here from the state of Hawaii.
Yes, and I know I'm certain is going to join the conversation. I think the point you made, Mr. Garamendi, is a really important one. These are not always pieces of legislation that require additional investments of resources. It's also about ensuring that the resources that we're expending are used in ways that support the growth of American jobs and American manufacturing. And your bill is an excellent example of that. I think we also have, as part of this package, kind of as a beginning point, the development of a national manufacturing strategy, a legislation that would direct the President to convene the stakeholders in the industry, in labor, manufacturers, to really develop a national manufacturing strategy with benchmarks, with ways to hold ourselves accountable to meeting those benchmarks, because, again, all of our competitors who are serious about growing manufacturing are doing it pursuant to a well-conceived and developed manufacturing strategy. We need to put the same kind of thoughtful consideration into development of that strategy, and then really hold ourselves accountable with good benchmarks, and I think that's a great other piece. Of course, my favorite in the package is my very own Make It in America block grant.
Now, if you'll yield back, it's always good to talk about your legislation. But if I might talk about it?
Absolutely.
This is a great way to get things started. This is a great way to do it. It came from a fellow from the East Coast, the great state of Rhode Island. And it basically is a block grant program to jumpstart the infrastructure programs all across the nation. The thing that's really good about this is it's a competitive block grant. You're just not going to go out with earmarks because somebody has seniority, but it's going to be based upon the quality of the program, the jobs that are brought, the necessity of moving people. I think it must have been a genius out of Rhode Island. Was it you, Mr. Cicilline, that came up with this idea?
I thank the gentleman for that excellent question. But This legislation really grew out of my visits throughout my district to manufacturers in Rhode Island, some who have been very successful, some that are growing, some that have not been growing, and I said, you know, what are the impediments? What would allow you to grow? What do you need as an American, as a Rhode Island manufacturer? And develop this idea of the Make in America block grant that would provide resources in a competitive process, as you described, for manufacturers to retrofit their factories, to make energy improvements in their plants, to train workers on new equipment, to buy new equipment, to engage in activities which will allow them to increase their exports, but really a shot in the arm to help manufacturers to compete successfully in the 21st century by identifying what they need. And look, we invest lots of resources in other areas of our economy. We don't do enough for American manufacturing. This would respond to many of the urgent issues that Rhode Island manufacturers, American manufacturers are facing. Do it in a competitive way with real measurement of outcomes, but really invest again in making things in this country. And I know the gentlelady from Hawaii has now joined us, who's also been an important part of the Make It in America agenda. I'd like to yield to Congresswoman Hanabusa.
Thank you very much. It's very fascinating to watch the both of you go back and forth on this. You know, Hawaii doesn't have manufacturing like the traditional form of manufacturing. However, there is one part of our economy that is very critical, and it's under fire. And I'd like to discuss that because I have some statistics as to how, when we protect what is made in America, we are able to actually see the results. And I'm talking about the Jones Act, which has different ramifications for all over. But for Hawaii, because we are in the middle of the Pacific, what we tend to forget is that our oceans are our highways. And what people think is that, gee, if we had ships coming in from foreign flag vessels, you know, we might have a reduction in the cost. And that is exactly where we do not want to go. Let's talk about manufacturing and how it affects us. First of all, shipbuilding. The gentleman from California and I sit on the Armed Services Committee, and tomorrow in one of the subcommittees they're going to discuss the 30-year plan of shipbuilding in the military. And the military, I know from conversations with my own hometown people who are in the maritime industry, that they have been called to Washington because the NAVSEA component wants them to continue to build in America. They want them to build the ships because we can't, the military can't continue to keep this industry alive, and they need help from the private sector. So let's look at why wouldn't the private sector do this. And one of the pieces of legislation that has been there to keep the private sector in the manufacturing of ships has been the Jones Act. Now let's understand what it means for a state like Hawaii, and then maybe we can, by going through that, understand what the ramifications are when we talk about Make It in America, because people may not see the actual connection to how we benefit from it. We have, for example, in my district alone, 16,494 domestic maritime industry jobs. This is the second highest of all congressional districts. This is according to a PricewaterhouseCoopers Transportation Institute survey or statistic that they did. Now, the total gross economic output from domestic maritime activity is $3.38 and $3.89 billion annually for the state of Hawaii. The gross output is defined as the sum of receipts or sales and other gross income generated in this maritime sector. Executives and other workers related to the domestic maritime industry receive total compensation of $785.9 million annually. The total value added for goods and services moving by domestic waterborne transportation is $1.24 billion annually. The state of Hawaii is a top contributor to the domestic maritime industry, ranking basically in the top 8 of 4 categories. Top 8 now. And when we think about how small we are: jobs, economic output, labor compensation, and value added. There are over 23,000 domestic maritime jobs in the state of Hawaii, and the total gross economic output for the state is well over $4.7 billion annually. And the related labor compensation is $1.1 billion annually, and the annual value added is about $1.7 billion. Now, nationally, the domestic maritime industry accounts for about 499,676 jobs, $29.1 billion in labor compensation, $100.3 billion in economic output, $45.9 billion in value added, and $11.4 billion in taxes. There are more than 40,000 vessels in America's domestic fleet, one of the largest in the world. But remember something, and one of my senators made this statement, and I was stunned by it. He said, after World War II, in terms of ruling the high seas, America had over 90%, and we are in now, I think, the low 20s. Now, what does that mean for us? Think about the industry. Think about the manufacturing. Think about the high-quality jobs that just the maritime industry represents. And what are we doing about it? We know trade. We also know in terms of the military that the maritime industry is critical, but the military alone cannot keep that industry alive. That is why, let us not forget, the Jones Act comes from the Merchant Marine Statute. And what is it that has been done in the past? In the Persian Gulf War, for example, and in other types of areas where we don't have enough ships, we go to the private sector, and we're able to do that because they are American-flagged, American-owned, and American-manned. Man, not to be referenced to anything other, man or woman. But that's what it's all about. We are, no matter what, the greatest power in the world. That's what we are. That's what we represent. And why would we not recognize that there are many things that we do best? And we ruled the high seas, as they said. And now we're willing to sacrifice that to other countries. That should not be it. Because trade, maritime, is a major component of our success and our ability to continue to be independent. And we know, the gentleman from California and I, as we sit through many of our hearings, that the new military is looking at a marriage with the commercial areas, the marriage with using all of the different ships plus airlines to transport things. You know, and that's the future. But to make that future a viable future and a cost-efficient future, we have got to continue to make it in America. Yeah. I yield back.
Thank you. And I think the other very important part of that conversation has to be a continued investment in science and research and innovation, because a lot of the things you're talking about, the kind of new manufacturing, we're going to continue to rely on the knowledge economy and the brilliant new innovators and the great new scientists and the great new technologies and research, and we need to be sure that even in these difficult budget times we're making investments in science and research that are going to help protect those jobs of the 21st century so that we can not only develop the ideas but then manufacture the products that are related to them. So I think that that's a second important part of it. I know the gentleman from California.
Well, I only want to take a second here. I noticed one of our colleagues from Texas has joined us, and she's a strong advocate of returning American manufacturing. I want to thank our colleague from the great state of Hawaii for bringing to all of our attention the critical importance of transportation on the sea and an American flag. Just for a moment, she caused in my mind a memory to return about an article that I read about where the ship is flagged, that is, where it's licensed. And I recall that, I think it's from Florida, the Carnival Cruise Lines, billion-dollar operation, with the ships actually flagged, I believe, in Panama. Interestingly, the tax that they pay to the U.S. government, that is their corporate income tax, zero,
Right.
nada, nothing, largely because they're able to avoid the American laws by flagging their ship offshore. We need these ships flagged in America for many reasons, and certainly the issue that she raised about national defense. Corporate tax policy, the R&D tax credit, another one of the bills that the Democratic caucus has put forward to permanently put in place the research and development tax credit so that we can expand the genesis, the beginning of tomorrow's manufacturing, which actually comes through the research. We can go on and on about that. Representing California, we think research is really, really important, and that's why we supported, without any Republican support, the research, the STEM program, science, technology, which is also research and the education that goes with it. Many, many things going on here. One of the things I found so disturbing was the effort by our Republican colleagues to back off the research, to reduce the research in America, when in fact that's where the future comes from. I'm going to yield back, Mr. Cicilline,
No, I thank
we
the
go
gentleman
on.
from California, and I think that point cannot be stated often enough, that part of our ability to make it in America and not only manufacture but invent and create and make the new discoveries is understanding that we need to maintain our investment in science and research to compete in this global economy. And I thank you for raising that. And I'm delighted that we're now joined by our colleague from the great state of Texas, someone who's been a very forceful advocate for manufacturing and making it in America, and I'd like to yield to the gentleman.
I thank the gentleman. It's my privilege to be able to join the gentleman from Rhode Island, the former mayor of one of our great cities, who understands when he looks at his constituents in city government that job creation and manufacturing churns the economy of local government as well. And I'm delighted to say to my friend from California, Texas is right with you. I don't think any state can reject the value of research. We have the Texas Medical Center. It's research in many different components, but they all come together to generate jobs and a better quality of life. And I am amazed at how astutely correct the gentlelady from Hawaii was on this whole idea of shipbuilding and the flags that ships fly under and the loss of income. But more importantly, most of us grew up, young that we are, with this country being the grand shipbuilder. We were proud of that. We loved those christenings, but more importantly to see those great ships. So I rise today to support you and to join also, if I might, with my colleague from Alabama, having had the opportunity to join her there in Birmingham and Tuscaloosa. Let me say to her and to those who have lost so much in Alabama, throughout the areas surrounding Alabama, and certainly to our dear friends in Missouri, in the tragedy of such a high cost of life, let me say to them that we will never give up on helping you. My point is this. It's interesting that today we had an example of the lack of seriousness that my Republican friends have regarding job creation. And no matter how we voted, I voted aye on the debt relief or the debt increase. We all know that our commitment is to save Medicare and Medicaid, but it is also to generate revenue. How do we generate revenue? We put the punch back in manufacturing. We manufacture and we create jobs. How did FDR? He put people to work. Eventually the government got out of putting people to work, and you saw this big manufacturing boom, shipbuilding, building homes. We all remember the massive home building that President Eisenhower engaged in, manufacturing, making a whole bunch of things. Let me tell you why this is so important, how sad I was that the debt relief was in fact a mockery, because if you commemorated soldiers yesterday, let me tell you what the unemployment rates are for veterans, 7.7%, and unemployment rate for those Afghanistan veterans, and I would include Iraq, 10.9%. How do you put these folk to work? You put a boost and a punch in manufacturing. You let these guys come back and use the skills that they've gained working or soldiering, if you will, in Iraq, fighting for our freedom, and Afghanistan and other places, and you say to these guys, I don't just mourn the loss of your comrades on Memorial Day, but I listen to the voices of your families and yourself. When you come back, I've got jobs for you. And let me tell you how you do it, because I am big on making things. Here we go. It's one of our bills that we're very interested in, H.R. 613. We build airports, we refurbish airports, we make them better, we fix our highways, we build or we engage in high-speed rail, trains, transit, and we make it in America. But let me say this, we make sure that trains are made here in America, assembled here in America. We go back to making the same trains that we had to make when everyone said, go west, young man, and go west, young woman. That's how Texas got here. That's how California got here. And so it saddens me that instead of spending the time today looking at H.R. 1730 that will be discussed, or 613, or the research tax, or the ability to give incentives for research, or to help the Texas Medical Center or Silicon Valley, we did something where we didn't take seriously the need of America to pay her bills. And then, of course, what does it mean when we talk about making it in America? Boy, this is exciting to me. We begin to appreciate chemistry and physics because we're in the business of inventing and therefore making. And this picture shows research and what happens when you get through with research. It is extremely important that we, in essence, show the importance of what happens to Americans. They get to work. So my point is that there are a lot of Americans that can be helped if we engage in job creation by making it in America. And as we have all committed to do, I am beginning to go around to my district, and I am excited about all the manufacturers that I'm finding. And I tell you, you just go around to say thank you to these manufacturers, thank you to what's happening. If we were to invest in America and make it in America, it's a better deal, not only for America and those Americans here, for our young people graduating from college, from our soldiers coming back. So I want to thank the gentleman for, I think, the right approach to come right after the mockery of a debt relief that was not serious, but for those of us who believed it was important to be serious, who may have voted aye, we really wanted to be discussing job creation, and we really wanted to be discussing having jobs and as well providing for those who are ready to work. Let's see if we can get something done. And I join with the gentleman in working on these important issues. I close by simply saying, what an excitement to make ships again, to build the trains for high-speed rail, to make America's infrastructure in such a way using our manufactured products. What a way to put America back to work. And so I hope we will continue to press this issue, and I believe the Democrats are going to be able to get this done, make it in America, and creating more jobs for America and generating the revenue that will really bring down the deficit. And yield back.
Well, I thank the gentlelady for her passion, and I'm really hopeful that this is an issue where we can really build some bipartisan support. We put forth from the Democratic caucus a very ambitious and detailed agenda on how we can make things again in this country and how we can rebuild manufacturing and really lead the world in the manufacturing sector again. And I hope it's not a Republican or a Democratic idea. I hope people understand this is good for our country, it's good for America, it's good for American workers, it's good for our economy, and I hope we'll be able to find some support on the other side of the aisle to make it a reality. I know a big piece of this is also supporting small businesses that are an important part of the manufacturing sector, and I'd like to welcome the gentlelady from Alabama again and thank her for being part of this discussion and yield to her.
Thank you so much for allowing me to be a part of the Make It in America special hour. I want to acknowledge the importance of small businesses in making it in America. Small businesses play a critical role in our economy. They provide jobs, they spur innovation, and they strengthen our economy. Small businesses are responsible for generating half of our nation's gross national product and employing half of its workforce. That is why I have introduced the Small Business Startup Savings Account Act. More folks would benefit if they were provided incentives to allow them to save money to start up a business. On average, an entrepreneur who wants to launch a new business spends $80,000 in first-year startup costs. Entrepreneurs often go into debt, large amounts of debt, to start their business. They may even try to save money ahead of time in order to start these businesses. Many even use their savings from their retired accounts to build the capital they need to run their businesses. This bill would allow entrepreneurs to save money tax-free so that they can start their small businesses. Similar to the retirement accounts, this bill would allow entrepreneurs to save up to $10,000 per year and grow that amount tax-free. Once an individual starts their small business, funds from their savings account can be used for operating expenses. In his State of the Union address, President Obama charged America once again to spark its creativity and imagination. He reminded us that we're the nation that put cars in driveways, computers in offices, the nation of Edison and the Wright brothers, of Google and Facebook. In America, innovation doesn't just change our lives, it is how we make our living. The government can't guarantee a company's success, but it can knock down barriers that prevent hardworking Americans from starting their very own small businesses. Innovation is the key to keeping America #1, and small businesses have always been at the forefront of American innovation. We can't expect to stay competitive in a global market without making the creation of small businesses a centerpiece in our playbook. In the 7th Congressional District of Alabama and in this country, the #1 issue is job creation. And an ordinary American with a dream of starting their own business will create most of the jobs that will employ the workers in America. In fact, over the past decade and a half, America's small businesses have created 65% of all jobs in this country. As we continue to build our economy, we must again build things in America. And we can do that through innovation and job creation through small businesses, right here in America. I look forward to working with my colleagues on both sides of the aisle to pass this legislation and to help make things right here in America. I want to again applaud the gentleman from Rhode Island for leading us in this discussion tonight. It is critically important to the people of Alabama that I represent and this nation that we make things right here in America. I yield back my time.
I thank the gentlelady, and I think this is one of those issues where the American people are well ahead of the elected officials on this issue, because I think most Americans recognize the importance of us making things again in this country. And this agenda, this Make in America agenda, is really about two things. One, rebuilding our manufacturing sector so that we can make products here in America and sell them from here all over the world. And secondly, about creating good jobs so that more families are able to make it in America. Americans inherently know that manufacturing is critical to our nation. It's not just that manufacturing creates good-paying middle-class jobs and fosters innovation, but we've also been incredibly proud as a country of the fact that we make things and we make the best products in the world. We need and want more success stories like General Motors' recent announcement that they'll be adding and preserving over 4,000 jobs across the United States, or Ford's decision to move 2,000 jobs back to the United States from Japan, Mexico, and India. And in fact, Ford is planning to add another 7,000 jobs here in the United States. We need more stories like that, that recognize that we make the best products, we have the best workers in the world. And I now like to yield back again to the gentleman from California.
Mr. Cicilline, I was just listening to you discuss the situation with General Motors and Chrysler. That was a very courageous move that the Democratic Congress, together with President Obama, made when they made a decision to save the American automobile industry. Many people, particularly the Republicans here in this House, said, don't do it. Government shouldn't interfere with business. Let the good go and the bad die. Well, this was several 100,000 small businesses across the nation that are supply chains that would have died. But the decision was made, a very courageous decision by the President, to support the foundation of one of the great industries in this world and one of the great industries of America. And so General Motors and Chrysler did receive a bailout. And here we are today with two companies back at it, making cars, making it in America, and by golly, we're going to import from Detroit. You know, that was one of the great advertisements there ever was. But that's what this is all about. That's what this Make It in America agenda is. There's another piece of this agenda that we really must pay attention to, and that is the future energy source of America are going to be renewables together with gas and nuclear. But these new industries need support in their early days. And this is a tax policy. There has been in place for about 7 or 8 years now a very robust tax policy to support the new renewable industries. The production tax credit. When you put a solar panel up on your roof and you draw down the energy, there is a tax credit available to homeowners. Those are very, very good. We need one more little twist to it. I saw this in my own district with those wind turbines down there. They were being made offshore, and yet our tax money was appropriately supporting the energy. But if you add to it one additional fact, and that is a tax policy that supports a wind turbine made in America so that our tax money uses American-made equipment. Another piece of legislation I have simply says, in the green technologies, wonderful, we need to do it. But let's make sure that those solar panels, those wind turbines, are made in America.
If the gentleman just yields, I mean, one of the most frustrating parts of that is when you look at the technology that forms the basis for those products, they were developed in large part, sometimes exclusively, by the great scientists and researchers at our great universities, and then they're manufactured outside the United States, and we're using public money to make those purchases. So you're absolutely right. Having that requirement that it be manufactured in the United States is a critical part of it. And I yield back.
Pretty basic thought for me is that it's our tax money, spend it on American-made equipment. The other piece of this is that these tax policies, these subsidies really work. I want to give you an example. About a century ago, nearly a century ago, America decided it needed a new energy source called oil. And over the years, subsidies were put in place to encourage investment in the oil industry. And it worked. It worked phenomenally. Created the best, most profitable industry in America, the petroleum industry. $970 billion, just slightly short of $1 trillion of profit after taxes for the petroleum industry. And after a century of being subsidized by taxpayers, it's time for those to end. Let that industry help us with the deficit. End the subsidy for big oil. Return the money to the American Treasury. Bring down our deficit. There's a lot of money here, depending on how you count it, somewhere between $2, $3, or $12 billion a year in subsidies for this industry. Let's end that. But unfortunately, we're involved in a debate here in Congress over whether we keep the tax subsidy for big oil and shift the burden of solving the deficit to seniors. An incredible policy put forth by our Republican colleagues that would force seniors to pay more for their medical insurance and literally end Medicare for everyone that's not yet 55 years of age. Terminate Medicare, shift the tax burden to them, and keep the tax subsidy for big oil. Hello? What's that all about? Big oil doesn't need any more help. The deficit needs the help. Don't give the tax money, tax breaks to big oil. And for heaven's sakes, don't terminate Medicare and force today's seniors and tomorrow's seniors to add the burden while keeping the benefit to big oil. This is about choices here. This is about choices. How do we use our tax money? For the future energy industries? Do we use our tax money to benefit big oil and force seniors in nursing homes to pay more? That's not out there 10 years from now. That's right now because the Republican budget reduces Medicaid. The biggest single part of Medicare is to subsidize seniors in nursing homes. So seniors in nursing homes, their families would pay more while big oil is protected.
Yeah, if the gentleman yield back, I thank you for raising that point. This is a very, very important question that we have to decide in this Congress. What are our priorities? What investments are we going to make both to rebuild our economy and get people back to work, but also to keep our commitment and the promise we made to our seniors? This proposal that was made by the Republicans in this very chamber to end Medicare, for people 55 and under, to end Medicare, and at the same time to reestablish the donut hole today, so it would make prescription drugs more expensive for seniors, make nursing home care unavailable to many seniors, slash funding for Medicare, and really shift control to the private insurance companies to make health care decisions for our seniors. A terrible idea. And at the same time, as you pointed out, preserving tens of billions of dollars in subsidies to the big oil companies that have had record profits, that don't need a check from the taxpayers, that adds to our debt, and at the same time not making investments in the kinds of things we need to rebuild manufacturing and to make it in America. It's the wrong priorities, and we've got to protect our seniors, keep the promise we made to them, make the right investments here, and get rid of tax subsidies for big oil, get rid of the waste and fraud, make cuts the right way, but make the right investments at the same time.
Yeah, we heard a debate here earlier, and while we're on Make It in America, this kind of moves us a little bit away, but they were saying earlier that in the health care reform, the Affordable Health Care Act, money was taken out of Medicare. Not true. Money was taken out of the pockets of the insurance industry, who were given, back in the Bush era, an additional subsidy. It terminated a subsidy of $500 million that the insurance companies had to participate in Medicare. Why in the world we would subsidize the health insurance companies, who this year are showing record profits, I don't know, but the Republicans perhaps want to keep that subsidy there for the health insurance companies, just as they want to keep a subsidy there for the big oil, rather than taking care of our seniors, shifting the subsidies to tomorrow's energy sources. These are policy choices, and the policy choice of the Democratic Party is to protect seniors, to make sure that Medicare is there today, tomorrow, and forevermore. Let me be very clear about this. If you want to have a fight on this floor, then you fight with us over Medicare. We will not tolerate the termination of Medicare, period. And we don't want to shift costs to seniors. We want to make sure that those companies that are profitable, the oil industry, pays its fair share and terminate the subsidies to them. I yield back my time.
Thank you. I thank the gentleman for yielding. I yield to the gentlelady from Texas.
Let me, there's just a whole litany of things that I think have been mentioned today that are so very important. One, I want to again emphasize, when you invest in America, you create jobs. Look what is happening to the auto industry, and I'm far away from the auto industry. I happen to be in Texas, but I can assure you that I can point to an auto dealership was alive today because we said yes to manufacturing and owning businesses and keeping the doors open. Now these same auto dealership, which by the way is in American-made cars, GM, is expanding, is refurbishing, will be hiring new people, will be selling more cars because we weren't engaged. And I think the point about that we have to create jobs to reinvest in this community points again to preserving Medicare, which is not being done by our friends. Certainly the vote that we had today has nothing to do on debt ceiling, had nothing to do with preserving Medicare and Medicaid. And I truly believe there is a nexus, there is a connection. Invest in America, create jobs, have revenue return back to the economy, bring down the debt, and watch America churn like an engine that is purring and doing better. We can make it in America. We can applaud our manufacturers. We can grow them. And I think the investment in America's auto industry is evident by all of the jobs being brought back home. Let me end by saying to all of those who can hear us, American manufacturers, American corporations, bring your jobs back home and participate with Democrats in their serious effort to enhance making it in America and creating more opportunity. You are better off here. You can watch your company grow, and you can support the continued growth of America and opportunities for small businesses and the young people who are now coming out of our many colleges and schools ready to work. I yield back to the gentleman.
I thank the gentlelady, and I thank you for your passion on this issue and again for restating the urgency of job creation and getting the American people back to work as our #1 priority. The Make in America agenda will help do that by restoring making things again and understanding it has to have a central place in rebuilding our economy, by building an environment in which American manufacturers can grow and create jobs and making sure our businesses are competitive all across the world. Many of our Make in America bills have won bipartisan support. And now we can win bipartisan support in the new Congress when we work for stronger job training partnerships, fight for a fair playing field for American exporters, and holding China and our other trading partners accountable for currency manipulation and unfair trade practices. But Making America also means recommitting ourselves to the future of America's middle class by ensuring that we are out-educating, out-innovating, and out-building our competitors. We, of course, have to cut wasteful spending and restore fiscal responsibility while making priority investments that are necessary to keep our nation competitive. And as the gentleman from California has just put forth that board, which really does describe the issues that are part of the Make It in America agenda, focusing on fair trade policies, tax policies which support job creation and American manufacturing, that give American manufacturing the tools they need to succeed, energy policies that will increase investments in renewable energy, clean energy, to make American manufacturers more competitive, labor policies, educational investments, protection of intellectual property, and investments in infrastructure. Those are really the outlines of what we know we have to do to really support making it in America, to support manufacturing, and to support rebuilding and strengthening the middle class of this country. And I yield back to the gentleman from California.
Mr. Cicilline, if anyone understands the history and the importance of manufacturing, it's a gentleman from Rhode Island. The Black River down through Rhode Island was the very first place that America started its manufacturing base, using water as a source. And today, as we look to the future of American manufacturing, we do have to deal with the energy issues. And we probably should take a full night here and just talk about how the American economy can benefit from a new energy strategy. Tax policies, we've discussed here a little bit. One of the things we didn't discuss on tax policy was that we put forth a bill last year that took away $12 billion of subsidies that American corporations had when they shipped jobs offshore. I have no idea how such a incredibly stupid policy got into the tax code, but it did. It's gone. It was a Democrat agenda to eliminate those tax subsidies that shipped jobs offshore. Unfortunately, not one Republican joined us in eliminating that crazy tax subsidy. That money's now back to help deal with the deficit. Labor policies, education, another full night can be taken on just education. We talked a little bit about science, technology, engineering, and mathematics, the STEM programs, but it's much, much more. It's the re-education of our workforce. Intellectual property, research, how you protect that, critically important. We did have a good discussion about infrastructure. This is our agenda. This is the American agenda. This is the agenda about the future, and it is so much an important part of dealing with the deficit. There's not an economist out there that tells us we can actually deal with the deficit unless we get people back to work. And the people that we want to get back to work is American middle class. The American middle class needs to be rebuilt along with our manufacturing base, and we can do it with a set of policies that we're putting forth here. We ask for our Republican colleagues to join us on these smart pieces of legislation. Mr. Cicilline, this is your night. You've led us in this. I yield back my remaining time for your closure.
Thank you. I thank you, the gentleman from California, for your leadership on this and for your participation tonight. And I thank the gentlelady from Alabama and from Hawaii and from Texas for joining us as well. I'll just end by saying you're right. Rhode Island was really the birthplace of the Industrial Revolution. And when you look at the role manufacturing played in the early days of our country's economy, of the industrial age, Rhode Island played a really important role. And from Woonsocket to Providence to Newport to Pawtucket, we have examples of great manufacturing facilities. And what we need to do is put in place the tools and the policies that can rebuild that strength, not only in Rhode Island, but all across this country, that takes advantage of the great American ingenuity, of the great American innovation, and the great American entrepreneurship to make the best products, to solve the new challenges of the 21st century, to build products and to sell them all over the world, to create jobs as we sell American-made products all across the world. And we can do it. We have the best workers. We make the best products. What we need are policies at the national level that recognize this is a key part to rebuilding our economy, a key part to the rebuilding of the American economy, and understanding that we can make things again in this country. And by doing so, we can ensure that American families make it again in America. And I thank the gentleman again. And I thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The gentleman from Rhode Island yields back. Under the Speaker's announced policy of January 5th, 2011, the Chair recognizes the gentlewoman from Alabama, Ms. Roby, for 23 minutes.
Well, thank you, Mr. Speaker. I ask unanimous consent that all members may have 5 legislative days in which to revise and extend their remarks and include extraneous material on the topic of my special order regarding the debt.
Without objection.
Thank you. Mr. Speaker, we face a budget crisis in this country. America is broke. Without bold action, our budget situation will get worse, not better. We also face a severe economic recession. The current national unemployment rate is 9.0%, and it has been as high as 10.1% back in April of 2009. With so many Americans out of work, the federal government should be doing everything in its power to encourage economic growth, not discourage it. Cutting spending is critical to creating a pro-growth environment. Cutting spending is essential to free market job creation. House Republicans are the only group in Washington showing leadership on this issue. We have voted repeatedly to cut spending in the short term, and we have passed a budget that would reduce spending by $6.2 trillion over 10 years. By contrast, it's been more than 750 days since Senate Democrats have even passed a budget. Recently, Senator Reid said there's no need to have a Democratic budget. In my opinion, it would be foolish for us to do a budget at this stage. That is a breathtaking statement for 2 important reasons. First, the Senate is required by law under the Congressional Budget Act to pass a budget. Second, working families all across America live within their means every single day by following a family budget. It's simple. They don't spend what they don't have. So I ask, why shouldn't Democrats in the Senate live by the same rule? Now, the White House is asking us to raise the debt limit, and Secretary Geithner wrote, "Never in our history has Congress failed to increase the debt limit when necessary." The White House wants a clean increase in the debt limit. That means they want Congress to approve more debt without cutting back on any spending. That is a failed policy. The vote we took tonight is a clear indicator that House Republicans reject that approach. Our message is clear. We will not vote to raise the debt limit without significant reforms to change the culture of spending in Washington. If the White House wants us to consider raising the debt limit, they should be at the table proposing significant reforms that yield trillions, not billions, in savings to the American people. So far, that hasn't happened. And tomorrow, the President has invited House Republicans to the White House to discuss the debt ceiling. His request for a clean increase in the debt limit was rejected tonight. I hope that tomorrow the President will offer serious proposals to cure Washington's addiction to spending. No lip service, no gimmicks, no smoke and mirrors. The American people don't want more political posturing. Real spending cuts, a true commitment to that, is what will spur job creation and get our economy back on track. Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I now yield to the gentleman from Colorado for as much time as you consume.
for her leadership on this matter and the time tonight to be able to talk about an issue that's very important to my constituents in Colorado, the 4th Congressional District, and around this country. There hasn't been a town meeting gone by where somebody hasn't stood up and said, Congressman Gardner, what do you think about the debt ceiling? What's going to happen to this country? What happens if we continue to spend the kind of money that this Congress, this nation has seen over the past decade? As we turn our focus and continue to focus on jobs and growing our economy, the only way that this nation is going to be able to create long-term jobs and job growth is if we do everything we can to make sure we are cutting spending and reducing the size of government. In 2006, President Obama talked about a failure of leadership to increase the debt ceiling, and that he would vote against it. He did vote against it because he believed to continue to kick the can down the road, to continue to spend money without a plan to reduce our debt, address the deficit, he believed was a failure of leadership. Tomorrow we have an opportunity to visit the President at the White House, and I hope we hear from him why he believed that in 2006 an $8.4 trillion debt was too much. Why it was a failure of leadership to go beyond $8.4 trillion in debt. Because the President is now asking us to go beyond $14 trillion in debt, to pass a debt ceiling that would allow Congress to spend even trillions more than $14 trillion debt that we have today. The people in my district are concerned that there is no stop sign in place for the fiscal recklessness that this nation has seen. The failure of leadership continues from one Congress to another without a plan in place. I've had the opportunities over the past several years to attend high school financial literacy classes where we're teaching our 8th, 9th, 10th, 11th, 12th graders what it means to be able to balance a checkbook, what it means to make sure that they are keeping their records straight. Unfortunately, this Congress has failed to learn the same lessons that our high school students are being taught in Colorado. What it means to be able to say no to spending, what it means to be able to say no spending money that we don't have. Mr. Speaker, I can't think of anything more pressing facing this country at the moment than to make sure we send a strong message to the rest of this country that we have learned a lesson, that we will create jobs in this nation, and we will do it because we said enough is enough when it comes to reckless spending, that we've put in place policies that will make sure we stop the runaway debt and deficit. The House took a stand today. We drew a line in the sand. With a vote 97 to 318, this House rejected the President's request to increase the debt ceiling. And I yield my time to the gentleman from, balance my time to the gentleman from Illinois.
I appreciate that. I appreciate the gentleman yielding, and it's indeed an honor to be down on the floor with you talking about something that is certainly near and dear to my heart, and that's jobs. And that's going to be reining in the out-of-control debt that we've got going on in our country today. And the thing that I think is important that my colleague pointed out, and something that I want to make sure we emphasize, is this is a Washington problem. Mr. Speaker, this has been going on both sides of the aisle for a long time. Republicans had deficit spending. The Democrats' answer was to spend more. It's about time that we stand up and say enough is enough. Back in 2006, the President actually said leadership means that the buck stops here. Instead, Washington is shifting the burden of bad choices today onto the backs of our children and grandchildren. America has a debt problem and a failure of leadership. America and Americans deserve better. Well, I couldn't agree more. We cannot continue to shift this burden onto our children and grandchildren. A $14 trillion debt. I went down actually today and saw the debt auction. In just a matter of minutes, we saw them, in essence, auction off another $50 billion of U.S. Treasuries. Most of that was auctioned off in under 2 minutes. We cannot continue to spend the amount of money that we're spending and still expect that we're going to provide the American dream for our children and grandchildren. To me, I think that's the American compact that those, I think, on both sides of the aisle can agree upon. that we here in the Congress have to step up and provide leadership so that our children and grandchildren will have opportunities greater than the ones that you and I know today. Unfortunately, I fear that if we continue down the path that we go down, that we're heading down right now, we may be the first generation of Americans that leave our country actually worse. We are looking for leadership. I am here on the floor reaching out and telling the President that we want to see a plan. Not that we want to reject a plan, we want to see a plan. Tell us why we need to raise the debt ceiling. Tell us what spending constraints are going to be put in place in Washington. Both sides of the aisle need to just basically change the way that we're doing things so that we can provide some fiscal discipline for future generations. When I look at it, and I know we've got some other small businessmen that are up here with me today, I look at it like we've just purchased a small business. Well, actually, it's a big business in the United States of America. It's also the greatest business on the face of the earth. It has some debt. We know we're obligated to pay that debt. But we also know that we have to restructure how the company, in essence the United States of America, is taking on that debt. And until we're prepared to do that, we can't expect that we're just going to continue to run the organization, the company, the United States of America, the same way it's been run. There's plenty of blame to go around. The time for leadership is now. And I welcome the opportunity to sit down with those colleagues on the other side of the aisle to come up with a solution so we can all march forward together and solve the big problems of our time. And with that, I'll yield, at least temporarily, to my friend from New York.
Well, I appreciate the gentleman yielding, but I believe the gentlelady from Alabama controls the time.
Thank you. I'll yield to the gentleman from New York as much time as he would like to consume, but we do have to be done in about 10 minutes.
Well, I appreciate that. I appreciate the gentlelady yielding. And I appreciate joining my colleagues, fellow freshman members of the Republican class who have come here to Washington, D.C. With the same philosophy that I believe I bring to the table. And that is exactly the point that we have been articulating here tonight. We need to get our fiscal house in order. So many people ask me, why is that so critical to our future? And when I go to my town hall meetings and I go and talk to my constituents back in New York, I tell them there's two reasons. One, we all know that if you run a business at the debt levels that we run this government as, it will go bankrupt. And we are talking about the bankruptcy of America. That is not acceptable to me. It's not acceptable to my colleagues here tonight. And we're going to work day in and day out to prevent that. But second, and more in the short term, we need to get our fiscal house in order so that we send a message to all of the world markets that the America market is alive and well. And you can invest your capital, you can invest your millions of dollars back here in America and put people back to work. It's not about creating jobs that are government jobs. It's about creating wealth. It is about creating a private sector that is strong, that is putting people to work day in and day out, putting food on their tables, feeding their families, providing for their education, and giving that way a life that we here have enjoyed to their children, to our grandchildren, and to generations that have not even seen the face of the earth. So for those two reasons, it is time that we honor the Senator Barack Obama's quote, that we need to stop shifting the burden of bad choices today onto the backs of our children and grandchildren. America has a debt problem and a failure of leadership. Americans deserve better. I call on the President to put forth a plan to deal with this problem once and for all. And with that, I yield back to my colleague from Alabama.
Thank you so much. I will yield to the gentleman from Illinois for as much time as you may consume.
I'd like to thank the gentlelady from Alabama for giving me the opportunity to speak here tonight. As a small businessman and a new member of Congress, I believe that the people did not send us here to raise the debt limit without a clear path to fix this huge mess that we have. It's an honor to represent the people of the 17th District in Illinois. It's with great honor, of course, comes even greater expectations. Future generations are depending upon us to get it right. You know, they didn't send us here to bury our heads in the sand and continue this path that we've been going on. As one of the new 87 freshmen who was sent here to deliver a message from America that enough is enough. When it comes to the failed policies of the past, I will continue to persuade my colleagues that we must get this under control. We reached the statutory debt limit on May the 16th of 2011. Secretary Geithner has said, we have enough borrowing to get us through August the 2nd of 2011. After that, the debt ceiling is not raised, then America will default on its obligations. Secretary Geithner has said that it would be insane not to raise the debt limit. I believe the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting different results. The debt limit has been raised 51 times since 1978. And today we are facing a crushing debt of more than $14 trillion. The insanity must stop here. With that, I yield back.
Thank you so much. I'd like to yield to the gentleman from Arkansas as much time as you may consume.
Thank you very much. I'm glad to be able to join you here on the floor tonight to ultimately talk about jobs. I've heard some folks mention debt and some other issues, but it all relates to jobs. And I hear folks on the other side of the aisle say, when are you going to have a jobs bill? And what I try to convey to my constituents and to my colleagues here is that when we're talking about the debt and getting our spending under control, we are talking about jobs.